Excellent. So, as I mentioned, my name is Heather. I'm a digital equity specialist here at Accessible Web, and I'll be presenting today. And we're going to talk about who is the accessibility advocate. This is a bit of a uh, mysterious creature that we seem to be hearing a lot about these days, but in fact, don't know a whole lot about since it's a relatively new role. So hopefully we can demystify this role a little bit today, deal with some common myths and misconceptions, and then really lean into what the role does entail, why it matters, and talk through a sample workflow for the accessibility advocate.
Heather,
So,
real quick, I'm
yep,
not sure if you wanted your camera on or off, but it is off at the moment, so I'll leave it up to you if you want it on, but just want to let you know.
thank you so much. I am going to leave it off for now, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Um, So with that said, I just want to set the stage, mention before we kind of dive into this topic, because accessibility advocate could be taken in a lot of different contexts. But for the purpose of today's discussion, this is specific to the digital accessibility space, and in particular, as um, the accessibility advocate role relates to having an accessibility page on your website, having process in place for receiving accessibility barrier reports or accommodation requests from your customers in as part of your accessible customer support. So that's the context we're going to be talking about this role in today. So yeah, let's start right off with what the accessibility advocate is not. So the first thing on our slide here is that advocate is not legally responsible for accessibility compliance. This is a big one, I think, that folks are concerned about. Um, Also not the only person accountable for accessibility outcomes. They're not a technical or legal expert by default. They can be, and it might give you a leg up in the role, but it's absolutely not necessary. It's not a full-time accessibility department, and they're not a compliance shield. So signing an accessibility advocate does not make that person legally responsible for accessibility. In fact, the responsibility for that stays squarely on the shoulders of the organization as a whole. The advocate is not a one-person accessibility department. Their work centers on coordination, communication, and follow-up, not doing everything themselves. They are not expected to be experts in code design or disability law. Instead, they know who to contact when something needs deeper investigation. This role is also not a substitute for an organization-wide commitment to accessibility. The advocate is most effective when leadership, development, content, and customer support teams are all engaged and aligned. And finally, this is not a box checking position created to avoid compliance risk. It's a proactive, human centered role that builds trust and keeps accessibility progress moving forward within the organization. Moving on to the next slide. Now that we've sort of dispensed with what the accessibility advocate is not, let's really lean into what the role does look like. So on this slide, our first item is an accessibility advocate connects themes and information. They keep accessibility visible and active. They coordinate responses to access barriers and accommodation requests. They encourage collaboration and inclusion. And this role can easily be scaled with the size or structure of the company. So the accessibility advocate acts as an internal champion who keeps customers' access needs centered and connected to the people actually doing the accessibility work. They listen, coordinate, and help ensure accessibility does not get lost among competing priorities within the organization. In a large organization, the advocate might collaborate with multiple different departments or teams, or in a smaller one, they might be the main point of contact who then helps direct feedback where it belongs. This role can grow with an organization and it's flexible and adaptable depending on the individual organization's needs. But what matters is not so much the title, but the function, which is keeping accessibility conversations alive, connecting customer experiences to internal teams, and encouraging consistent progress. Our next slide, what makes a strong accessibility advocate? We'll look at some qualities and characteristics of a team member that might be well suited to this role. And I think it's interesting to note here in this list of key qualities, there's nothing here related to disability lived experience or technical expertise. These are kind of characteristics that we would all look for in a team member or a coworker. So the first one is they're a clear and compassionate communicator, curious and collaborative, problem solver who follows through, detail oriented and dependable, and they are an active listener. So the most effective advocates are excellent communicators. They listen carefully to customers and coworkers, and they translate accessibility concerns into actionable information. They're naturally curious and collaborative, looking for solutions that work for everyone. They're organized and dependable, following through until an issue is resolved or a next step is confirmed. They understand that progress takes patience and teamwork. Their strength lies in how they connect people across the organization. So customers, developers, designers, and leadership, so that accessibility becomes part of normal operations rather than an isolated task. And I want to just pause on this point in particular because the accessibility advocate role is only going to be successful in an organization where that person has access to resources and leadership that is already has sort of bought into the accessibility journey and is supportive of that. I think you can imagine that they could really be wanting to do this job and meet customers' needs and be more inclusive, but without access to the resources and support they need internally. It's pretty easy to see how sort of frustrating and painful this could be for everybody involved. So that's just an important takeaway. Next slide, we're going to move on to talk a little bit about what an accessibility advocate workflow might look like. This is a simplified one. We're going to talk through the steps first, and then I'm going to use a recent experience. I personally had a positive experience with accessible customer support to bring this to life a little bit. So the first item here on our slide, the first step in this process is that the customer reports a digital access barrier. The advocate receives and reviews that information, contacts the customer for clarification if needed. Immediate accommodations are identified and offered. The issue is shared with the responsible internal team. The advocate tracks progress and checks for timely updates, and the customer receives follow-up and status when the issue is resolved. So let's take each one of these in turn. So I was on an e-commerce website recently, and I was shopping for apparel. I needed access to the size guide, and the link to that information on the page, the product page I was visiting, was revealing content that was not accessible to my screen reader. So this company had an accessibility website on their or an accessibility page on their website. I was easily able to locate it in the footer. So I went ahead and jumped in there, found the form to report the issue, which I did, providing necessary information to help them understand a little bit more about it, such as the page where it was located, the accommodation requested, as well as the assistive technology and browser that I was using to kind of give them the full picture. Probably less than 2 hours later, that advocate obviously had received and reviewed that information. And the next step, which is to do that and reach back out to the customer, I received an email saying, we understand what's going on, and providing a link to an accessible document with the information I requested. So that accommodation was provided very promptly and efficiently, which is, of course, the next step is to provide that accommodation. They also let me know that they were escalating the issue to the development team so that it could be addressed. And I, in fact, heard back from someone on that team letting me know that they were working on it, remediating it, and hoping that future customers would have an improved experience there. So, and that all took place within the matter of like a day. The whole process was complete. Now, that's simplified to some extent, but I think it's a really clear example of how doable this work is. And in fact, it also, I think, is a good example of a lot of times I will hear questions like, what if somebody asks for an accommodation that we can't provide, or they ask us to fix something that we can't fix right away, right? The fear is that customers going to ask for something too big and scary. And that's a legitimate concern, right? When you're not familiar with the work, that seems like something you'd be concerned about. But in fact, this is a good example of the type of barriers that customers are experiencing, and the type of very manageable accommodation and situation that can be offered to resolve the issue. And so I think this just is a nice demonstration of how doable this work can be. Most customers aren't out there to get you in a gotcha situation or anything like that. They're asking for pretty reasonable adjustments here. And so this simple communication loop that we just described is what turns a frustrating barrier into a positive interaction. It shows the customer that accessibility is taken seriously, and it ensures that internal teams stay aligned and accountable. On to our next slide. We're going to talk a little bit more broadly about why the accessibility advocate role matters, and kind of where it fits into the broader picture of shifting left or building an organizational culture of accessibility. So on this slide, our first item says that the accessibility advocate creates structure for responding to access barriers, which is exactly why the experience I had was so good. They had a structure in place, and it was easily able to follow. Also, having an accessibility advocate builds trust with customers and staff. I had a great experience, and I've told everyone that'll listen. Encourages steady, realistic progress on accessibility. Having an advocate turns accessibility into part of daily business. It strengthens brand reputation and customer loyalty. The accessibility advocate gives, as we mentioned, structure to the process of handling digital barriers and accommodation requests. Instead of leaving these tasks to chance, there's a clear path of communication and accountability. Customers see the difference immediately when accessibility reports are handled respectfully and consistently. It builds trust. It tells customers their feedback is valued and that your organization is serious about inclusion. And so, in summary, when your organization designates an accessibility advocate, it does more than just respond to problems, right? It creates a system that connects people, resolves barriers, and shows that inclusion is woven into how you actually do business. All right, so that completes the presentation for me. Gianna, I think if you want to follow up with our how accessible web can help
Yeah, of
content.
course. So if you join us regularly, you probably know, but we offer a variety of software and solutions to services to help you bring your website up to WCAG conformance and help create these feedback mechanisms, like we discussed today with an accessibility advocate. So if you haven't tried Accessible Web Ramp, I dropped that coupon code in the chat at the beginning to register for a free trial of Ramp and to get an extra free month instead of 14 days free. We also offer audits and VPAT reports, which are a deliverable of an accessibility audit, as well as a variety of consulting and training resources. So no matter where you're at with your organization's kind of accessibility maturity model and accessibility strategy, please feel free to reach out and we would love to chat. We are here to support you and we have the tools and people to do so.